What's up, you guys? Thank you for clicking on this video. So, as you can tell by the title, it's a bit of a topic that comes up a lot in the Transformers community. Is there a definitive G1 Megatron figure within the Generations branding? Now, since 2006, 18 years, we've had Generations from Classics to Universe to Generations to the weird trilogy format that they've been doing since 2015. We've had like 6 G1 Megatrons that were supposed to scale with the current size classes. Voyager class, your typical leader class Megatron, to scale correctly with the deluxes, Voyagers, leaders, Titans, commanders, and stuff like that. I'm not counting some of the weird, like, Legends class Megatrons or any of the repaints or stuff like that. I'm just straight going with G1 Megatron. I did throw in the Classics Deluxe because he is still G1 Megatron, and it was supposed to be one of the main ones at the time, but it just threw in some elements of G2 Megatron for whatever reason. First up here, let's talk about the Deluxe. Why not? This is not a good figure. This is probably the worst one of the 6 here that I'm talking about. The arm cannon spinning claw thing is terrible. I actually used to have this figure, so I remember it pretty well. So, yeah, that claw arm is terrible. The other arm is just weird looking, and it just never did anything for me. The design itself is fine. If he was a Voyager, I think I would have liked it a bit better because it would have scaled better with mostly everything else in Generations. But as is, he's too small. The arms suck. In the Voyager, I mean, props to Hasbro at the time for still figuring out a creative way to make a gun mode Megatron, because even back then they were still wary of making a gun mode Megatron. It's not as bad as it is now, but they were still like, I don't know if we should do a realistic gun mode for Megatron, which is why they opted with the Nerf gun, and they really modernized it and made it their own in a clever way that I think really works even nowadays, 18 years later, when we haven't gotten a Generations gun mode Megatron since. Except for, the fan modes online with the other ones that have released since it. But officially, this was the last, and I think they executed it pretty well with what they were going for. It's just that he's got outdated articulation, and the arm cannon might be a little bit awkward and stuff. But I do think he held up a bit better than some of the Megatrons that I'm talking about in this video. And then you fast forward, I don't even know, 6-7 years. You did have the Legends class G1 Megatron that turned into a little pistol. You did have a couple IDW Megatrons, I think, and a few repaints from the 2 Classics molds. But we didn't get a new mold in years, for G1 Megatron at least. And it wasn't until Combiner Wars in 2015 when we got it, and it was a leader class, and he scaled well with certain stuff back then, but especially nowadays, looking back on it, he's just way too big. The articulation, the way they did the ratchet joints on him, it just makes him awkward and not fun at all to pose. The proportions, how he is with his legs being super skinny compared to the rest of his body, just looks weird. The arm cannon, the way it was positioned and the way it looks is just kind of strange. Like, you have this missile launcher at the top, but then you have the fake cannon at the bottom. I don't know why they thought that looked good. But, he did have the rubber tires. He did have the luxurious silver paint all over him. He did have good head articulation, too, from what I remember. He could look up and down a lot, more so than a lot of Transformers, even for today's standards. So there's some redeeming qualities about him, but overall, he's just super outdated, especially with articulation and scaling-wise. And then you fast forward 2 years later, in 2017, Titans Return, you get one that is arguably even worse in every way except for maybe posability. It's easier to pose because there's not those trash ratchet joints all over him. The coloring on the Titans Return is just awful. The triple changer mode just makes his design and proportions so messy. It just doesn't work for Megatron. The arm cannon is just so small and dinky. The stickers they used on him are so terrible. I'm so glad we moved past all the stickers and generations. And it's kind of crazy to think that stickers like that were the norm on pretty much every figure not too long ago, like 6-7 years ago with Power of the Primes, Titans Return. It was just ridiculous back then, and it really shows the dark times engineering-wise and budget-wise for generations during that period from, like, I don't know, 2015 to 2018 until we got Siege. But yeah, I think this is one of the worst Megatron figures Hasbro has ever made. I do not think it's good, and a lot of people at the time were hyping it up too. Like, I honestly do not know why. If I was a collector at the time and I saw this first revealed, I would have been like, hell to the freaking no, I'm sticking with my Classics Voyager class Megatron, because this just looks super dumb and weird. Like, they couldn't even throw a little bit of silver paint on the robot mode. Like, come on, that gray plastic is super cheap and just boring looking. It's even worse than the gray plastic that they chose for the Siege and Earthrise version. Which, speaking of, let's transition into the Siege Voyager class. We get this 2 years after the Titans Return. And it's a step in the right direction, but if you guys have been following me in the channel for the past couple years, I've said this before and I'll say it here for those of you who are new. I still think the Siege/Earthrise Megatron mold is super mediocre. It's just mid, man, and I'll tell you why. When you look at Voyager classes since 2019, they offer this interesting bang for your buck sort of engineering to it, where they add this extra articulation that you don't see on a lot of Deluxes or Voyagers, and sometimes even Commanders and Titans. And sometimes they come with these extra accessories, these clever bits of engineering, and just cool stuff that really make it worth for your $35. I'm talking the likes of Beast Wars Inferno, Cybertron Starscream, Cyclonus, G-Axis. Like, think about this for a second. They gave an obscure G2 villain more articulation and less hollowness and better engineering on him than one of the biggest pop culture villains of all time in the entire world, the leader of the Decepticons, one of the main A-listers of Transformers. Let that soak in for a second, people. Like, just look at the figure. He's got these freaking hollow forearms with 5mm pegs poking out of it. He's got no wrist swivel, no hand joint like Jixis did. He's got these big blocks on his hands. He's got weird proportional issues that make him look stumpy and just way too chunky than he should be. The feet articulate super weird, especially when you're looking at a lot of Voyagers these days that have nice up and down movement along with smooth ankle pivot. Megatron has neither, I'd say. The ankle pivot even looks weird from certain angles. The heel spurs and the way they design the feet on this weird angle for the back of the feet just makes him super awkward to stand. It's just super weird. He has barely any head articulation except for a swivel. Like, in this day and age, a lot of Voyager class figures have some decent head articulation going up and down. And especially for a character like Megatron, who's semi-dynamic in the way he fights and moves around sometimes, depending on the iteration you follow, him not being able to look up or down just a little bit is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. The articulation on him is just so mediocre. He doesn't even have proper bicep swivel. He has elbow swivel. Like, are you kidding me? It's ridiculous. He has elbow swivel instead of bicep swivel on freaking Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Even the waist swivel is a bit compromised with how he transforms and how the backpack lays on his body. It's just ridiculous. And of course, the Earthrise is no better. They tried to make it a bit more animation accurate to the G1 cartoon, I guess, and it just looks worse in my opinion. The head sculpt looks super dinky. You can't even take him seriously. The parts forming for his quote-unquote sword is even worse because he can't even hold it like a sword. It just mounts on his arm, and now you have this weird-looking tank barrel on the back of it to double as this weird secondary cannon that just never looked good. The paint on him, in my opinion, looks slightly worse than the Siege figure. And of course, because of it being a slight retool, he's got all the same problems articulation-wise and proportion-wise as the Siege figure. So both of these are equally bad in their own right. You know, pretty much the same way. It's it's just hilarious that is what they chose in the modern era for a G1 Megatron. They didn't even try to do him as a leader class, not once. And this is 4 or 5 years ago now, and I do know we got the SS-86 coming up next year, and I hope to God that is finally the definitive G1 Megatron we've been looking for. We've gotten quite a few good Optimus Prime figures the past few years, but it's been few and far between with G1 Megatron, and I just hope it's good next year. I mean, he's a leader class, he's SS-86, so he's supposed to be. I hope he has hand articulation, he comes with cool accessories, he's got good engineering, he's not hollow all over the place like the Siege and Earthrise figure, and he just looks good, and he has good articulation. That's all I'm asking for. It would just be fantastic, and it just makes sense, especially next year, you know, and especially this year with the Commander Class Optimus coming. He needs a quality version of Megatron to go along with him. You do not want to be posing Siege or Earthrise Megatron along with a freaking Commander Class G1 86 movie Optimus. It just wouldn't make sense at all. So hopefully the one next year is finally the definitive one, because these 6 here that I talked about in today's video really do not cut it at all. The closest one, in my opinion, I mean, the Siege and Earthrise mold, the one thing they do have over the older ones is slightly more functional articulation in certain areas, but it's still not saying much, because comparing it to modern figures, again, it's just not that great to begin with. But if I were to pick just basing it off of looks, I don't know, I kind of still prefer the Classics Voyager class, and I just think it's still genius till this day how they integrated a gun mode into a semi-modern figure in this day and age. I mean, it's been 18 years now, if you can believe it. Time flies, but yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Just figured I'd go over all the old generations Megatrons and give you guys my opinions on them and why we pretty much don't have a definitive G1 Megatron in the Generations line, and why it's super important that we're getting the SS-86 leader class next year, because hopefully that's supposed to be the definitive one. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below, what do y'all think about these Megatrons? Do you think any of these are definitive in your opinion, or do you think they're trash? All my social medias are linked down below: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. My email is also down below if y'all want to hit me up about business inquiries, if you want to message me about whatever. Or if you want to subscribe to my new Patreon, link down below. It's got tons of exclusive content that you won't see here on YouTube or any of my social media accounts, such as exclusive stop motions, which, by the way, I'm posting 2 new ones at some point today, so be on the lookout for that. Exclusive photography. You guys get access 1 week before everybody else here on YouTube to my Transformers short films, stop motion short films. You guys get Discord access. You guys get sneak peeks at projects I'm working on, such as my films, dioramas. I'm probably forgetting a couple other things, but if you guys want to help support me and help support the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. But yeah, thank y'all for watching this video. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye!